Welcome to Happy Homes and Gardens. I'm your host. My name is Daphne Royse. I am a Royse broker, architecture, and interior designer. I have known Al Royse for approximately 25 years. He's one of the busiest people I know and is always doing something for his family, friends, and coworkers. Al's term as mayor of Hillsborough has just concluded and has returned to his City Council position. Al has a law degree and is a retired senior partner of Deloitte and former past national chairman of the American Heart Association. He also spent significant time in China as executive in residence at the University of Shanghai Science and Technology, and has a distinction of being the youngest legislator ever elected in his home state of Legislature at his age 21. Let's welcome Al. And I feel honored to be able to secure this interview with you today.
Well, thank you, Daphne, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you on this wet, rainy morning here, but I guess we need the rain.
We're in the middle of a stormy day.
Yes.
So how is life now without all the having lifting titles?
Well, no longer mayor, but still pretty busy because I'm still on the City Council. So that keeps me off the streets at night, as my dad used to say. And there's a lot of other activities I'm still involved in. Part of the role of the City Council, whether you're mayor or not, you still serve on a lot of different town committees, and you still serve on a lot of regional county committees, the so-called JPAs. So let's say that I've been pretty busy, continue to be busy, probably more so than I should be or would like to, but so be it. It's been fun.
During your 2 years term of a mayor of Hillsborough, what was the most challenging things that you're facing?
Well, I look at challenges in any leadership role today in government as probably consisting of two big buckets. One are the issues, which I'll get to, which is what most people think of. But secondly is the broader issue of just governance, making sure that you have a system and a culture that promotes civility, promotes discussion, promotes respect for one another, and is open and transparent. And there's a process to me which is always important as the answer. So just making sure you have that right governance structure, the right balance, the right interaction with residents and with your constituents and with your fellow colleagues is probably, I won't call it an issue, but always something to keep on top of mind. But second, some of the issues, Hillsborough is no different than most of the towns in Northern California and in the state. The number one issue, particularly this past year, has been the housing element, which is a requirement that every city and every agency has to come up with a housing plan every 8 years to try to address the issue of affordable housing. So we have been struggling and tackling and dealing with that for the past year and a half, maybe longer, and getting near the end of the process, as they say. But that is one that has really galvanized the community, incited a lot of participation. We've had a lot of public meetings, town hall meetings. That's probably been issue number one. And the other big issue last year was wireless facilities in our town. That's a big issue because Hillsborough, like a lot of communities, are very proud of their beauty and their character and the ambience of the town. And whether you do anything to perhaps disrupt it, there's a lot of passion and concern on making sure we know what we're doing the right thing. So putting up wireless towers generated a lot of discussion last year. And the wireless towers were designed to improve our communications capabilities, particularly in emergencies, whether it's rainstorms and floods or whether it's fires or whether it's earthquakes. Those are probably the two most publicized issues, but underlying all of it is a host of day-to-day issues. I have a colleague of mine that I like to quote when he was asked one time, "Do you like being on the City Council?" And his response was, "If you like gas, water, and sewer, this is a place for you." Because I think that the basic issues are really what makes the town operate. So we spend a lot of time around just basic infrastructure, basic operations.
Hillsborough is a very unique town without any retail business. It's
Correct.
all 100% residential. Would that bring more challenge?
Different kinds of challenges. We are no commercial businesses. It's 100% single-family residential homes. Although we do have some schools, we do have a country club, We do have a couple other facilities in town, but they're non-commercial. The positive and the negative, every positive is a negative, is we don't have commercial businesses. So a lot of the issues that some towns deal with, we don't deal with. On the other hand, we don't have the revenue that comes from commercial business. We don't have the luxury of being able to do mixed-use housing planning. I mentioned the housing plan earlier, because we have no commercial to do mixed-use operations on. And being a single-family residential community makes us focus more on being a user-friendly, community-focused, and a people-focused area, which is why people move there. People sell their homes in other parts of the state, of the cities. They want to move there for schools, for the beauty of the community, for the fact that it is based around people, not around businesses per se. But we're right next to businesses: San Mateo, Burlingame, Millbrae, Belmont, up and down the peninsula. So we are not devoid of that, but we just happen to be able to take advantage of it, but not having it be actual part of the geographical boundaries.
I understand you are the oldest child in your family. Mm-hmm. Would that help you with leadership in the early age?
Well, I'm the oldest of 5. 4 boys. The last one was a girl. I think my parents did not stop until they got the daughter my mother wanted. So, I think no matter what order you are within the birth, you're going to learn something. There are different exposures that teaches you different things, whether the oldest, the middle, the youngest. And there are a lot of studies done about what you learn being at what order that you're born in. Being the oldest, clearly, you probably learn more responsibility. You're asked a lot of times to take care of the younger siblings. You're asked to sort of represent them when they have disputes with the parents, right? They'll come to you and say, help us there. And you also set the pattern, I think, based on what you do. I think subconsciously sometimes the younger kids will take their cues, from what you do. My brother, who's highly successful, paid me a great compliment one time out of the blue, because I was the first child in my family. And when I say my family, not just my immediate family, all my cousins on both my father's side and mother's side never go to college. And my brother at one time said, if you hadn't gone to college, I'm not sure the rest of us would have gone. Now, I'm not sure I believe that, because I'm very proud of my family. My brothers and my sisters are incredibly successful. My brother Roger, who is a highly prolific and prominent attorney in Silicon Valley. My brother Ken is a nationally renowned water engineer. In fact, he chaired my home state water commission and has testified before Congress many times and is a frequent expert witness. My younger brother Byron, has his own business he formed, his small business. My sister Dolores took over the family business and was recognized a couple of years ago as one of the outstanding entrepreneurs in her hometown. So it's a very successful family, and being the oldest of it probably did teach me some aspects of leadership, perhaps subconsciously, but you pick it up and you sort of leverage off of that.
Okay. Back to your hometown. You were elected as a legislator. Mm-hmm. What makes you want to go into politics?
Well, I've had 2 different careers in politics. When I was young, and I ran for and was elected to my state legislature. And then I left that after a couple terms, got involved in the workforce, and then when I retired, I got back into politics. So there's 2 distinct areas. When I say politics, I was asked to run for the City Council, and then was elected City Council, and then elected mayor. The first time I ran, it was more of a challenge. I ran in a city that was 2.5 to 1 of the other party, of the party I ran for. I don't think anybody, including myself, thought I would get elected. I thought it was an opportunity to learn something, to get experience speaking, to get experience dealing with other people, and I just thought it'd be a great experience, so I ran. But I was always taught early, when you do something, do it. So I ran, meaning I went door to door and knocked on doors. I had friends of mine from college that I remember coming down from the university one weekend and going door to door on my behalf. I worked pretty hard at it. I went to a lot of events. I would come back after college. I was in college at the time. On a Friday, I'd get back in time to go to the local high school football games and mix with people. I'd spend Saturdays going door to door. In the afternoon, I'd speak at a luncheon. That evening, I'd speak at some events. On Sundays, I would go to church and I would go to other events on Sundays. On Mondays, a couple times we'd have debates. I'd come back for those. And then I'd drive back to college 300 miles away, and I'd go to college the rest of the week and then come back again on Friday and repeat it. But I committed to it, and I put time and effort into it because I viewed it as a great learning experience. The second time I ran, again, and by the way, when I ran the first time, I was the youngest legislator in the state. I was the only legislator in my home state under the age of 30. So I had a voice, I had some things I wanted to say, and this gave me a venue to say it. And being young, I was a novelty, so they gave me a big floor, a big forum to speak, and I took advantage of it. And I can tell you some of the issues we dealt with. They're fairly interesting at the time. But later, when I ran again after I retired, some of the senior people in town came to me and said I had chaired our financial advisory committee, been on it for about 12, 15 years, had chaired it for, about half that time. And they asked if I'd be interested in running for council because they really needed somebody with financial expertise in particular. And I had paid my dues, people knew me, I knew them, and so I agreed to run. There was no burning issue per se, other than a desire to give back. I love my community, I love the people, I love the character, and having a chance to be an integral part of it appealed to me. So I said yes and ran and won, and here we are.
Is that helping you try to make a decision going to law school?
Well, when I was in, I went to law school back before I was elected to the state legislature. Okay. I was, I think, a senior in college. Then I went to grad school, and then I went to law school. I went to law school because I grew up watching Perry Mason, like so many people. I heard one of the recent Supreme Court justices was asked, "How did you ever get in law?" She said, "I grew up watching Perry Mason." Well, I never made it to the Supreme Court, but I had that same background. And so in the back of my mind, I always thought it'd be nice to go to law school. And so after undergraduate school, my major was in accounting. I'm a CPA as well. In economics, I went to graduate school for a year, not just for the graduate degree, but for the experience of being a graduate teaching assistant. I love teaching, so they gave me a chance to be a GTA, and I went in the one full year and then the summer, and then I got my master's degree, and I went to law school. And I went to law school because I like learning. And this gave me an opportunity to learn more. And what law school does more than anything, I think, is it teaches a methodology for approaching problems. It teaches you a way to learn about them. Same thing with undergraduate, with accounting and economics. There's a mental mindset that you learn that enables you to deal with all kinds of problems, whether they're economic problems or they're legal problems. And that to me was the most valuable aspect of all my learnings, is that ability to learn. So.
You demonstrate a lot of leaderships in your career. What are the differences is leading a company, an organization, and a town?
Well, there's a lot of similarities, but there are some distinct differences, and probably the most prominent difference is the building consensus. When you're in business, or in my case with Deloitte, which is one of the, if not the largest private service business in the world, it's right among the top. And I had the opportunity to be a partner in that organization for quite a while. I was with it for 34 years. I think I was a partner for about all but the first, I think it took me 8 years to become partner, so all but the first 8 years. I managed our San Francisco practice, our Silicon Valley practice, our Northern California practice, our California practice, our Western regional practice, and ultimately managed our national and then our global industry programs and clients and markets. So I had a number of leadership opportunities. But when you're in business or you're with a group like that, you sort of set the tone, but more importantly, you set the direction. You make a decision, and then people will execute it, implement it based on your guidance and your leadership. When you're in a nonprofit, you just can't say, we're going to do this. You've got to build consensus. You've got to get people to buy in with you. And then when you're in government, it's even more difficult because your constituency, the people that have to buy in, are so much broader, and everything's under a public spotlight. I think one of the guiding principles of mine, regardless of organization, is trying to build commitment, not just compliance. when you get people that are committed to what you're trying to get done, they'll do it because they understand it, they believe in it, and they'll do it when you're not looking. Compliance, they'll do it because they're told to do it, but they really don't believe in it, they don't understand it, and they won't do it when you're not looking. And so if you really want to be successful, take the time, put the effort in, and make sure people understand and do it because they believe in it, regardless of organization. Well, government's harder because your organization, residents, community, colleagues is so much broader. When in business, it's a much more isolated group, and they're much more likely to listen to you, and you're able to do it more one-on-one. So that's been a big difference. But having the opportunity to work in all those three fields plus education, it really has given me a pretty good perspective on the different aspects of how to get stuff done in every organization.
What are your greatest strengths and weaknesses in leadership?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I just, town of Hillsborough, we just did a management retreat on Monday of this week. And part of the retreat dealt with, and I as a former mayor and as council member with my fellow council members participated in the management retreat. And one of the exercises was taking a survey, the Gallup survey, the Clifton Strengths, to assess our strengths and our weaknesses. And I don't know if you're familiar with it. I think they mentioned that over 29 or 30 million people have now taken that strength finding test globally. But I've taken that test, and I've taken a number of others. Most of my tests have focused on my greatest strength being innovative, able to think of new ideas, and the ability to execute them and to build teams. I think that's probably my greatest strength. This test I took on Monday just reaffirmed that. If you've ever taken the test, my top 5 strengths were: number 1, they call it maximizer, which they define as being able to take a good group and make it a great group. And I pride myself in that. It's always been my goal to come in and do analysis of where we are and what would the next level look like, and what do we need to do to get there, and how do I accelerate getting there. So that's always been a strength of mine. Second thing was learning. I mentioned earlier going to law school that I am a learner in terms of strengths. I like knowing as much as possible about as many things as possible. That to me is really exciting, and I've always done that. I belong to a number of different speaker series, so I'm always listening to people. I find that fascinating. Positivity. I think one of my strengths is I always look for how people can help us succeed. Bill Walton, my all-time favorite coach and one of the greatest football coaches of all time, I remember when he passed away, one of his colleagues made a comment that when you came in and they discussed about a player, most of the time the discussion was, what can't that player do? What does he need to improve? Bill Walsh always said, what does he do well? I want to know how he fits in with our team and what he can do. That's what I look for. And I'm the same way. I like to see where people's strengths are and play to their strengths, not their weaknesses. And so positivity has been a factor. And so those are some of the key strengths, I think, is these tests I've always discussed with me. I might share with you a weakness when you're looking for questions that when I first took a leadership role at Deloitte, they sent me to this special national school. It was back in New York, and they had all the new leaders of different groups there. And we had to go through this series of tests to determine our leadership characteristics. And I remember sitting in this room, there's probably 50 of us at that time, in that room at that time, and the instructor starts reading one. So I want to pull this one out because this person scored among the highest we've ever seen in leadership and among the poorest we've ever seen on management. And he starts reading it. And I'm looking at my evaluation, I realize he's reading mine. Because he said I was off the charts on leadership skills, but I was a very horrible manager because I had all these ideas and I'd flow them out there and I wasn't always following through on them. That was a weakness. And what I concluded was it wasn't worth my time necessarily personally trying to improve on that, but I had to deal with that issue. So you can do it by having groups of people focus on that for you. So first thing I did was form a kitchen cabinet of about 7 people assigned for each of those areas for execution, implementation. And I meet with them every Friday morning on what we were going to get done this week based on all my ideas and strategies. And on Friday, I'd meet for a summary report of how it went that week, what was accomplished, what wasn't. So from a management perspective, our group is viewed as one of the top performing offices in all of Deloitte. Out of 26 offices, before I took over, we were ranked number 23. When I left in 4 years, we were ranked number one in the entire country, both on quality, on execution, and on innovation. And I'm really proud of the ideas that we came up with Deloitte. When I left, they did this tribute and mentioned stuff that I had initiated and formed, and I'm proud of that because I really think politics or anything else, the big idea, your vision, is really important. You need to know what you want to accomplish and how you're going to get it done. And that to me has always been a basis of leadership.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I learned a lot here. So how did you get involved with the American Heart Association?
Well, frankly, a little bit by fluke. I had not been involved with it. I had just taken over the managing partner role for the Northern California and San Francisco specifically, but included Silicon Valley and Hawaii and other offices. And I'm at my desk and I get a call one day, and the person introduced herself as the executive director of the American Heart Association for San Francisco. And the person who was going to chair their heart walk, they do an annual heart walk to raise money and build awareness, had in his business had been moved to Australia. And somehow my name had surfaced as being a potential successor on short notice. And I listened to the person ask. And my philosophy in life has always been, right or wrong, is always say yes before you say no. And so I said yes. And it's been a great life experience. Great people, incredible mission. I've enjoyed it immensely. And from that, chairing the Heart Walk in San Francisco, I did it for 2 years. Then I chaired the local board. I chaired the state board. Was nominated and elected to the National Board of Directors. I served on for about a decade, served in a number of leadership roles, including chair of the executive committee for about 6 of those years, national chairman of the organization for 2 years, chairman-elect for 2 years before that. It was an incredibly valuable experience because I read a book a long time ago that talked about. The book was, I love the title more so than I like the book, but the title would resonate with me. It was called From Success to Significance. And many times in our life, we are highly successful in everything we do, and that's important. That makes a difference in a lot of different ways. But when you do retire, you have an opportunity to impact people even more directly through being significant to them. AHA gave me an opportunity to affect the lives of people. And one of my roles as national chairman was traveling the country, meeting with their different boards and different affiliates and different organizations, and seeing the people who are most affected. From the little boy, who was born with a heart defect. And I remember a little Irish boy with his sister who was about 2 years old, a little redheaded girl like my daughter's redheaded. And he was now 6, and he had effectively had a heart transplant, you name it. And his mother was telling me the story then. He was a little baby. His sister would hold him on her lap on the couch and keep telling your mom, Robbie is still breathing. He's still fine. He's still good. And that sort of resonates with you, that those life stories. To the 2 twin sisters that were marathon runners at the University of Utah, and one suffered a heart attack and survived while running a race. But the other sister, because of that, took an exam and discovered she had the same heart defect. And her life was, I think, saved too by early detection. But you read all those stories, you get to meet the people, and it just was a great experience for me, and an organization I'm still very actively involved in. So that's why I got involved. I was asked, and I said yes.
If you can, so is anything you will do differently in your career?
Not really. I think things happen for a reason, and I've appreciated all my life experiences. I've appreciated the opportunities I've been given. There are things here and there you look back on, you'd say, I wish I'd been a little bit more aggressive in pursuing certain roles. But other than that, I think things have evolved the way they should evolve. I think most people, including myself, have a tendency to underestimate what you can do. And I think this saying yes before you say no is a philosophy you need to adopt. You need to sort of push yourself a little bit, and understand that you can probably achieve it. And you just need to be more aggressive on looking for those opportunities and embracing when you get the opportunity. But I think I've done that most of my career, particularly the second half of it. So I feel good about it. I don't focus much on regrets or negativity. I'm a big believer. Play to your strengths, enjoy life, and keep moving. No matter what you're doing, keep moving. It bugs me when people say they don't know what to do and they sort of stall themselves and they're not doing something while they're being stalled. I always tell my kids, I don't care if you don't know what you're doing, do something in the interim while you're moving forward, while you figure out what you want to do from a life perspective. So I don't have a lot of regrets. No, I probably should have, but I don't.
Do you have advice to young people who want to enter politics?
Well, number one, I encourage you to do so. It's harder and harder to get involved in the political life because of all the public attention on social media. That's a brand new challenge for us that did not exist 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago as much. So it's more challenging. But I would urge you to do it, number one. And number two, when you do it, focus on the fact that your purpose is to solve problems, particularly at the local level. You're not there to be ideologues or give speeches and all, although you are there to provide leadership. But your number one job is to make sure things work, trains operate on time, garbage is picked up, etc. You're there to solve problems, and that means you need to find ways to work collaboratively and civilly with everybody around you, and to listen to what the problems might be. So I would underline the word listen, and underline the focus on you're there to solve problems. At the same token, there are a couple of things I would say. I was told a long time ago when I was first elected, you need to stand for something or you'll fall for anything, meaning figure out what you believe in, what your values are, and use that to help guide you in your decision process. Stand for something. But don't be fixated in your frame of reference. Every time I go to a council meeting, I do my homework, and I come up with a point of view of how I think I would approach that issue and what I think I'm going to do on it. But then I'm flexible enough so that when my council members or people make public comments, that I'm open to what they say. So if they're convincing, I will change my point of view based on feedback I get. If they tell me I'm wrong, but I come in with a position, and then I'm flexible enough to listen to what people say, and I learn a lot from what my colleagues say, from what public comments are. They have great insight, they have great perspectives, and they'll tell you things you don't know, and they'll give you a point of view that you haven't thought of. And you need to be flexible enough to incorporate that into your decision process. So that's my advice, I think.
What you mentioned earlier about social media is about the negativities.
It's a challenge because it's so omnipresent. Everything you do is repeated a number of times and in different contexts. And so it's both a plus and a minus. There's a lot of positives to this increased social media. People are more aware. It's easier to get information out to them. They're more connected in some ways. On the other hand, if you have a burglary in town, it might be repeated 50 times through 50 different mediums, and people get the sense that you're being overwhelmed with burglaries, whereas you might have only had one, but they see it so often. So it can be misconstrued sometimes. And secondarily, a lot of people using social media on a regular basis are people that represent a strong point of view, and so they have a tendency to dominate the airwaves. And sometimes the information they use is not always accurate. I was surprised to learn, I listened to a documentary on social media, the start of it and the ethics of it and the problems with it. But I was surprised to learn that on some of the websites that when you ask that question, the answers could be different for you than for me. You think you're getting a factual answer, but it's tailored to what the algorithms say the way you lean. So the answer you get may be different than the answer I get. Well, that makes it difficult to have a conversation when people are asking the same question, wanting a factual response and getting different answers. So you have to deal with that. But by and large, just the increased visibility increase in tension and the opportunity for it to be misused, which it has been, creates a new environment for leaders, public leaders to work in. And so again, it's a challenge, it's a problem. You just find a way to deal with it, handle it. Don't overreact to it, but just understand that there's a new player in town that is part of the elements you deal with now.
Are you planning any new projects other than your semi-retired life?
Well, I've been involved since I retired. I've probably been in 3 different stages of projects, whether it's City Council or the Heart Association and nonprofits, or whether it's been the teaching and the executive and resident programs in China. I think it's time to probably really retire. So I do plan to do a lot more travel. One of my goals when I retired the first time was to live in different parts of the world on short term, like 2 to 3 months at a time, attend local universities and take classes in history and art and local politics and stuff like that. And I would like to, be able to do some of that again. So travel is clearly high on my list. I don't think you should ever stop being involved, because once you do, I think you start to move backwards rather than forwards. So I think learning is critical. So in being involved in different things, keep you learning, keep you sharp, keep you engaged, keep you in the game. So I don't intend not to do that. I would just probably do it at a different level than I've done in the past.
Is that particular thing you like to master or learn?
There's probably a number of things I'd like to get better at, like golf being one of them, and tennis being another. But, I've always wanted to play the guitar. I've always regretted never learning to play the guitar. So a couple of years ago, for Christmas, I actually got a guitar. But I haven't had time the last couple of years to go take lessons. So I do plan to learn to play the guitar. So nothing exotic, nothing major, but probably something I think I'll get enjoyment out of. But and then combine that with travel. And last but not least, if you're a grandparent, the number one joy in life are grandkids. I have 2 grandkids that I think the world of. I really want to spend more time with them. They grew up so fast, and I just want to have the opportunity to avail myself of what they're learning and how they see the world as they grow. So clearly that's number 1 on the list, is a lot more time with the grandkids.
So when you mentioned travel, you're going to live in different places for 2-3 months. Is that domestically or internationally?
Primarily, both, but primarily internationally. I had the opportunity to be the executive in residence in China. Those were like 6 weeks to 3-month assignments in which you go over and you were a co-teacher or lecturer at the university. You typically teach with a professional professor from a university from the U.S., and you would co-teach a class or you would lecture. I enjoyed that immensely, but it also gave me the opportunity to live in Shanghai, for 2 months at a time, and I enjoyed that immensely. I have a friend of mine that just did that in Italy, went there for 3 months, and lived there. He and his wife lived there for 3 months and got to, be part of the community. That's what I'm envisioning. I enjoy U.S. travel. The U.S. is an incredible place. So I do have a second home in New York, apartment out there, condo out there. I want to spend more time there. That's where my grandkids live. So I expect a lot of time there. And there are segments of the U.S. that, my relatives and friends live. I tend to do extended visits to. But in terms of living over, my thought was internationally. Okay. And there's 3 or 4 spots I'd like to spend time in. It's like a lot of students now get to go on these exchange programs when they're in school. What a great idea. Yes. I never did that. I want to do it now, in effect. So.
Actually, that was the best experience I ever had in my college life.
Really? Yeah.
That was the best. I would encourage every student to go study on ball. Yeah. Anywhere.
Yeah. My daughter did it, and I envied her, and I had the opportunity to go see her, and I said, when I retire, this is what I want to do. So that's part of the goals.
Great. Thank you so much, Al. I really appreciate your time today. And that was a wonderful interview.
Well, it's a pleasure being with you. Okay. I wish you the best, and to keep your umbrella I hope the rains sort of level off, but we need more rain, so I'm not going to say it stops. So.
We need more and no flood.
It's a pleasure being with you. Thank you very much, Daphne.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.